Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch-Hunter. Today we have as our guest, Natalie Day, Athletic Director at Ogden High School. Natalie, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad
Thanks
to
for
be here.
Thank you for being here. And let's have you start by sharing with our listeners where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, those type of things.
Okay, so I grew up just north of Ogden. It's in Logan. I went to Logan High. I participated in volleyball. I was a setter, and then I ran track, and I did cross country, and I went to Utah State. My plan in high school was not to go to Utah State, but I wanted to go into athletics, and then I actually wanted to be a dietitian. And so I got offered a job to work for USU Extension on campus. And so I figured, well, I should go because I already have a job. So I told my mom, even though I'm here, I'm not staying at home. I'm going to move up by campus. So I went to Utah State and I got my bachelor's in exercise science and community health.
So what brought you to Ogden High then?
So in college, I got married and we moved to Michigan. I have 4 kids. And so my oldest is born in Michigan. Then we moved to Central Washington. We moved back to Layton, to Boise. And then about 9 years ago, we moved from Boise to Pleasant View. And my youngest started to go to school. And when I was in college, I wanted to be a teacher and a coach after some of my teachers. And so I just didn't, because I remember my advisor at Utah State told me, do you know how many health and PE teachers are at high schools? Like, that is going to be a job you're not going to get. Like, there's not very, like, that is not a very good option. So I did community health, but then my youngest went to school and I knew I had to do something else. I already volunteered and taught classes at the gyms, and I started my own online coaching nutrition business. And so I thought, you know what, I loved community health because when I went into the classrooms, and so I applied for a job at Ogden High and went through the ARL program.
That's great. So let me go back to your time in Michigan. And I don't know how much time you were there. So my question is, Spartan or Wolverine?
Oh, Wolverine. I've been Wolverine fan for since I've been in like 5th grade.
All right, perfect. Let's have you talk for a moment about some of the sports and activities you were in more detail in junior high and high school and even before then, and maybe share some of your experiences there.
So in my family, it was always just like, you have to be active and do something. So I remember, I think my first experience was probably tumbling and then playing soccer. And my dad was always involved, like wecoaching us. And so then we played softball, and I had a sister that was 15 months younger than I was. And so I was a catcher, she was a pitcher, and we'd always be outside playing something. I started playing comp volleyball in middle school. And the problem, I didn't grow very much. I'm only barely 5'3". So as I got into high school and everyone was getting taller, I started running in 7th and 8th grade. And then I got to high school and I just wanted to be involved. And so I did cross country too. And our athletic director, Ron McBride, was our cross country coach. And some of my best memories are running in high school when he would be riding his bike along the trail we were running, and he would just tell us to go run faster as he pedaled along as we ran. And I just remember that because I thought, you know what, it doesn't matter how old you are, like, you can still be active, you can still be coaching people, and it doesn't matter where you're in your life too. All my hardest moments I think I could go out and go run or do something active, and that would kind of be my safe space. And then I ran track, and I love track. I did hurdles. My mom used to tell me, like, why did you do hurdles? You're like literally the shortest person out there, but I just loved it. I love the camaraderie and just being a part of a team, and like coaches, I think just cheering you on, and like you knew you had a support system.
Well, let me ask you this. What was your background in education before you were offered the athletic director job?
So when I started at Ogden High, I went through the ARL program, and instead of just going and getting my 18 classes in class management, I got my master's in education with my ESL endorsement. And then I've been coaching since I started Ogden High. Like I was the softball coach. And then I started helping. I did all the filming, and I was over our student government. So I just kind of saw a need and knew I needed to help. So I started doing all the filming, in charge of all the huddle for football and headsets now, like headsets. And then I just like social media, I just saw that need. And so, and I would just kind of help our athletic director, like wherever he needed, just because it needed to get done. And so I would just
Who was the AD? Who was the AD when you first got there?
Sean McQueen was the AD.
Sean McQueen. Okay.
The very first person that I met actually at Ogden High was Phil Russell. So he would always, we'd be in the press box every Friday night, and he was like, this is what a tiger is. And he would tell me like the little extra things. It was all about the extra things, not about like all this. It was how people felt like when you talked to them and when you like were there cheering for them. And I also got coaching because I also realized in my classroom management was way better when the kids knew that I cared more than outside in my classroom. But like once I would like go to their games, I started coaching, and then my classroom management, I don't really have an issue because they know that like I actually care for them as a person more than just like what my classroom is.
Very well said. Just parenthetically, Phil and I go way back, coached against each other as far back as the early 80s in girls basketball. I know that dates me. So let me ask you this. So how long have you been the athletic director at Ogden?
So I was assistant last year, and then we've kind of had a couple of changes. And then so that I'm the co-AD with like Scott Yetter this year.
Okay. So this question sounds the question is, how has the job changed since you first started? But you've only been in it 2 years. But
yeah, but
have you seen any change in just the 2 years you've had the job?
Yes. Well, so when I first like did it, COVID hit.
Yeah, there you go.
So that was like, welcome to all these rules and like seating. And I think I became the mask police last year. And so I think that has changed. I think also just like even going to online ticketing, like that has changed. I think too, people like the expectations are different. Because I think we missed so much connection last year. People are like in the sense that they're frustrated sometimes. They just now feel like they can like take it out on you more than ever before. Before, I think they would be like hold back just a little bit. But now I think it's almost like they don't know where to put their frustrations. And so I think you get a lot of that. Because they're maybe like they're not frustrated, like you're just doing your job, but they don't know where else to like place that blame, so you get blamed.
Sure. Absolutely. And let me ask you this: what was your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
I think biggest failure is I take things really personal, because I think even going back to like learning from Phil, like I want it to be like a personal experience. And so when people give me even constructive criticism, I take it very, very personal. And so sometimes I can get blindsided by my feelings because it's so personal that I have to like take a step back and look at it versus professional versus personal. And so I think that's my biggest failure and like thing that I'm like trying to learn on, like separating that line between, and realizing some coaches, like, they take it out on you professionally, but that doesn't mean that they don't like you personally.
There you go. Let's go to this question. I know that you've started your preparation for getting your CAA in the exam. Talk to our audience about that and how, since you're only a 2-year athletic director at the present time, what's that been like? Share some of your experiences from that, some of the good things that have happened because of that.
So I love learning. And so the more I learn, the better like I am. And I just think the because of my love of learning, that was like why this like fits, and getting my CAA, like taking the classes. I'm only 2 classes away from being able to take the test. So my goal is to take it by December. And because I'm also getting my yoga certification right now. So like I was going to take it in April, but I gotta wait. I gotta finish those 2 classes. But I think just learning and like growing, it's helped me like how I relate to people, like the knowledge that I have, I know. And I think even like legal issues too. I think sometimes like taking the classes at the national conference, like a lot of times I was sitting there going, oh, I don't like, and there's classes too, I think sometimes that people don't understand why decisions are made. And the classes have given you me a lot more background knowledge, like why decisions are made. And so it makes sense. And so sometimes I feel like, and to be able to give that knowledge to other people because of those classes, and like where the legal stuff comes in, that people don't understand that this is why certain decisions are made, and why certain things can't happen, and so forth. So I think it helps growth.
Let's explore for a moment your journey with the UIAAA. You've only been an athletic director 2 years, and I know your previous ADs. I know Sean McQueen was involved with the Utah Association, and Phil was really involved. And before Phil, Dave Nordquist is a famous person, obviously, before the time you got there. So was it just always expected? Did they tell you about the UIAAA right off the top? Tell us about maybe going down to your first conference and meeting all these people and not knowing who they were.
For me, I knew like when Sean took over and he went down with like Phil, and like I knew like Dave Nordquist, and so I have like, but once I get into something, I want to find out everything. So I just like search everything that I can about like being a better athletic director. And so I think I actually searched and I found it. And then I asked Sean about it, and he's like, oh yeah, that's where like Phil like when I first got introduced, he took me down there, and then I saw the conference and I knew that I wanted to. So I talked to our district, Mitch Arquette, and knew I wanted to go because I knew like if I go there and put my place in situations, that it will only help me grow. And if it's like that quote that I surround myself by the 5 top people, then that's who I will emulate and be better. So I just knew like personally too, I wanted to get involved and grow.
How many UIAAA conferences you've been to? 1 or 2?
1.
Just the 1. And so I'm interested, as the executive director, your impressions after the first time you went, what it was like for someone who it's brand new to, because obviously my first conference was way back in the 80s. So I'd be interested in your opinion. So
I enjoyed it. I realized too how many there's very few females at the conference. I sat by, I'm trying to think who I sat by. From Salt Lake, and I really
Rachel Townsend.
Her, and she's on the district at Salt Lake. And I saw
that's Missy Mackey Whiters.
Yes. So I sat by her, and she was like put me under her wings, and so like it was great because I instantly had connection, I think, and knew like, okay, I want to like do this, and this is like what I want to do. And I think just the connection and like just meeting people face to face, and then knowing that I'm like what they're doing, and like taking like bits and pieces. So I just like that whole networking.
Let's talk for a moment about the UIAAA grant to the national conference. everyone may not be aware, I know that you are because you applied for it, but we do have grants for first-time attendees to the national conference. So talk us through how you went through that process and then how you were awarded that.
So I thought, well, I want to go to the national, because if it's like, if I'm growing from this and I need to go to the national, because that would just like expand my horizons. And so I applied for it. I think I didn't actually get it. And then the second round I got it. And it was actually this timing that we had some very big family changes last summer. And so I was going through a thing with my kids, and they lost their father last summer. And so we just went through some life changes, and really hard summer. And I remember getting that call because I was trying to decide if I could actually leave my kids in December to go to the conference. And I thought, no, it's okay. I'm not going to go. And then I got the call that I got the scholarship. And I was like, I think this is like a sign that I like actually need to go to this, and it will help me like grow, and I will be a better mom for my kids if I can kind of do this for myself and continue to learn and grow. So it actually was like a huge blessing in my life, because at that time I was like, well, I can't spend money. I didn't want to spend money on that and leave my kids, but by getting the scholarship, I was able to like, okay, I'm going to put that as a priority and my kids were super excited that I could go. And it's been life-changing, like literally going to the conference. It has been a hard year. And I remember right before the conference, at the conference, I ran into Trevor Wilson, and I told him, I might get emotional, but it's just been a hard year. And I think communication was different. And like being a co-AD, we have different ideas and stuff like that too. Right. And I told Trevor that I was actually going to quit like that. I was like, I'm going to the conference because I got this scholarship. But then when I get home, I am going to like give this part of my job up. And then Trevor got me involved in the mentor cohort group at the conference. And that literally has been life-changing. And every month we meet and we are reading the book, the 12 characters, like from West Point. And the people I've met in that group alone has been like something that I could have never like asked for, or such a benefit to my life. So it really has changed my life by going, and I haven't quit.
Very well. Let's follow up then. I know my first national conference was way back in the 90s in Nashville. Your first national conference was Denver. So I'm interested as to what you thought going in, and of course, after having experienced it, what it was like coming out, and just share with our listeners what it was like being a first timer, because all of us at one time or another were first timers to the national conference.
I think first when I got there, I was like, wow, it's like overwhelming. There's so many things. Like I cannot be in all these places at one time. And I tried to take as many classes as I could. And so I think at first I just like, I got to sit back and be like, okay, what's priority? Cause then next year I'm going to come back and like take the things I couldn't take. But I think just getting out and like networking and meeting people from across the country and taking ideas and knowing like when you came back, like, okay, we can like, I think it was a little overwhelming. Like, oh, there's so many things I want to change and so many like make additions and make this program better. But I had to sit back and be like, okay, one thing, like small bite at a time. But I think the networking and meeting the people and even just like the presenters in the classes and talking about personal like experiences, and especially like I took a lot of the legal classes. Like you just can't do that anywhere else.
So were you able to make some new Utah friends and some new friends across the nation?
Yes, absolutely. So like, it makes me excited, like, oh, I'm excited to go back and to go to the different conferences. So.
What do you think is one common myth about being an athletic director that you'd like to debunk for the general public out there?
That it's like all you do is like watch games all day. Probably like nothing else. You just like sit and watch sports all day.
Yeah, and people think that, and they have no idea of the behind the scenes and what goes on. And of course, I think a lot of people, not the people listening to this podcast, because they're mostly going to be ADs, but just since COVID hit, what's been put on you on top of everything else that you do, I think is an incredible amount. So let's talk for a moment about what's the favorite part of your job.
Probably my favorite part would be of the kids and me making that connection and making them feel like whatever they walk out on the field, the court, or whatever, that they mean something and they are part of a community and they're part of a team, but also part of the greater like school and the community. And so I think that connection and that with those kids definitely is the winner.
When you were, before you moved back, when you went to Central Michigan, and I think you set up Washington and Oregon, of all these places that you lived in, these other places, which was your favorite outside of Utah and why?
So I don't know, because I always make friends, and I was involved in like in Midland, Michigan. I was involved in the community center and I ran like the community duathlons. I didn't like the weather there, so that was too cold for me. Wenatchee, I did personal training there, so I have really good friends there. Boise probably would be my favorite because I had a triathlon group and we'd run 10 miles every Saturday, and I did the Relay for Life for the American Cancer Society in Boise. So like just the connections I made in Boise probably would be the top on my list.
Excellent. Let's finish up with a couple of questions. The first one being, and you're a new athletic director of 2 years now, but if you had advice, for a new athletic administrator, knowing what you know now, and you could give them 2 pieces of advice that they would absolutely have to follow in order to be successful, what would those 2 things be from your point of view? I
think first, not everyone will like you. Usually people are mad at you all the time. At least somebody is. And if you can separate that, then, and just remember your why. I think that's the biggest thing, is why you do this and like why you got into it in the first place, like why you coach, what it's really all about is your why. Because I think sometimes I get caught up in like all the people that are mad at me for schedules, scheduling the facilities and what a nightmare that is, but people don't understand that. We're all the legal liabilities too.
What is your why?
My why is that for these kids, that they find connection and that they find a safe space, that when they come to school or on the field, that they know that they matter, and that no matter what they go through, that they have people that are in their corner.
Let's finish with this question. Natalie, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
I don't know. I pretty much, I think that's good.
All right. Well, we'll finish on that. That wraps it up for another edition of the UIAAA Connection. Once again, our guest today has been Natalie Day, the athletic director at Ogden High School. Thanks for being on the show today, Natalie.
Thank you.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.